Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in Luke's 12th chapter. We're going to try and make it at least as far as the 12th verse, and if necessary, we'll take it all the way to the 21st. But in the opening discourse, which spans the range of the first 12 verses, the master indicts the vice which pays virtue homage, which is known as hypocrisy. And this is a fact of life in any religious body. It was with the Jews, it was with the church almost from the beginning, and has been with us ever since. And when we act in a hypocritical manner that is at variance with the profession of our lips, if our hearts are far removed from the words we say, if we don't mean what we say, if we do what we do out of insincere motives, then we are guilty of this sin. And it also provides a negative depiction of the church to outside observers. It has dissuaded many from joining the flock, but my message to them is never let anyone else's lapse in faith be a stumbling block for your own. So the opening verse reads, "Meanwhile, when an innumerable crowd of people had gathered together, so that they trampled one another, he began to say to his disciples first, 'Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy.'" So this is a not uncommon situation. He was a dynamic and enigmatic itinerant preacher who was able to attract large crowds, but he did not have the mindset of a mega church superstar, super church pastor that we see so many of these days. He would resort to crowd controls, often to winnow the flock, separate the wheat from the chaff. He was in the business of building quality disciples. He wasn't moved by the quantity of the crowds he attracted, because the larger the crowd, the more sin was present in that crowd. And so he often delves out unpleasant truths to separate the fair weather and foul weather disciples from the authentic article. And the target of his indictment is the Pharisees. They were, in general, hypocritical people. They put a lot of emphasis on the legalistic observances, many of their own making, of religion, and the mechanical motions and the ritualistic precepts, but neglected the weightier matters. They fasted twice a week. They tithed of all they earned, but they still had something missing, and that was because they performed their deeds and their religion was motivated by insincere hearts. And the image of leaven is familiar to anyone who's ever baked bread and what gives it rise. So sin has a similar effect in that on the human ego, in that it puffs up it causes it to expand, much as leaven does with bread. And Paul uses a similar analogy in at least one other location. "And whatever is concealed shall be revealed, and whatever is hidden shall be known." Now, this is not exactly verbatim, but essentially communicates the same concepts in the 17th verse of the 8th chapter, which reads, "For whatever is hidden shall be revealed, and whatever is concealed shall be brought to light." But here it's a slightly different wording, but the concept is intact and parallel. So everything that was kept secret will one day be brought to light and made manifest and beyond any dispute or denial. So all the hidden sins, all the words we spoke in private will one day come to light and come back to haunt us if we are not careful. "So whatever you have said in the dark shall be heard in the light, and whatever you have spoken in the air of inner rooms shall be proclaimed on the housetops." So even our most private utterances, the ones we put ourselves at deliberate distance from publicity, the things where we wouldn't be proud of being heard said, will be on full broadcast one day for the entire world to know, and they will expose ourselves. Now, the true test of character is not what one does when one is watching, but what one does when people aren't watching. So there is quite often a dramatic variances between the public language and private behavior and language of religious people. "But I say to you, my friends, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, and after that are unable to do any more." So friends is a term of affection, endearment. These are addressed to the true disciples, the authentic disciples, who stuck around for the message. They embraced the hard-hitting truth for what it was, and he told them that they had no cause to fear even their life. Given in service to his cause, one will gain their life. This is the paradox of Matthew 10:39 16:25 and Luke 9:24 and Mark 8:35. He who values his life above all else will forfeit what they treasure most in eternity. And so there's no sense in fearing death on this earth when we have the assurance of an eternal afterlife awaiting us. But I shall show you whom you should fear. Fear the one who, after killing, has authority to cast into Gehenna. Yes, I say you, fear him. So Gehenna is a reference to hell or Hades or the grave, and the power to determine the judgment which can send many people there lies in the one capitalized, that is Elohim, who is reserved the right and prerogative to issue judgment according to his wisdom and according to our repentance and response to the atonement. And this is the one we should fear. So the fear of Yahweh or Elohim is the fear which expels all other fears. When we properly and fully fear him, we will not fear what any force, principality, or demonic minion can do to us. They can take our lives, but they can never take it eternally, inasmuch as we do not let them. If we cower out and value our life when the opportunity presents ourselves to embrace the martyr's calling, then that's not going to look too good on our report card at the judgment. Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 copper coins? And not one of them is forgotten before Elohim. So the human measurement, they place monetary value on sparrows, which are birds and animals, and the going rate was 2 copper coins. We don't have any idea what the monetary equivalent is adjusted to, but the point which is clearly communicated is that the value of any life form is inestimably higher in the one who created them than the creation. Humans tend to use animals for what they can get out of them. We're the dominant species on the food chain, and we are called to exercise dominion, but we must do so with the be submitted as stewards. But even the hairs of your head have all been numbered. Do not fear, you are worth more than many sparrows. So I've heard it said that that is often an encouragement to people who have lost hair in this life, that every hair they've lost will be recovered in the afterlife. And and do not fear, because as valuable as Elohim holds the sparrow, he holds us in inestimably more exalted value than he does the sparrows. We are the apple of his eye, in the prize creation we alone endow the image of our Creator. And I say to you, everyone who confesses me before men, the Son of Man shall also confess him before the angels of Elohim. So this is the parallel verse can be found in Matthew 10:32. But inasmuch as we confess him, we profess his name and witness of him and what he has done for us and what they can do to others, he will also confess and welcome those into heaven before the angels of Elohim, who guard the access point to that exalted station. And now, this is not to suggest that there will be room for insincere confessions, because confession is not immune to hypocrisy, of which he earlier exposes and indicts. It's possible to have the words of our lips be far removed from the intents of our heart, and he has harsh words for those who make insincere confessions. Many of them are going to come to him at the last day, the day of judgment, and say, Master, Master, have we not prophesied in thy name? Have we not cast out demons and performed miracles and done mighty works? And he's going to tell them, Depart from me, you workers of iniquity, I never knew ye. That's in the tail end of Matthew 7th chapter. But he that has denied me before men shall be denied before the angels of Elohim. So there's no salvation for the one who harbors their Christianity in secret. It has to be an open expression, a public declaration that we are that we are called to make, and we are to witness of the one who gives our life meaning and can give meaning to every other life. And everyone who shall speak a word against the Son of Man, it shall be forgiven him. But to him who has blasphemed against the Ruach Kadesh, it shall not be forgiven. So this verse, this injunction, incites a lot of fear in faithful believers, but the mere fact that they are fearful of the fact that they could have ever done the unpardonable sin is indicative of the right intent of the heart, because those who brazenly blaspheme the Ruach Kadesh will not be aware that they are even doing it. They will be so deadened and desensitized to sin that they will just do it as a matter of course and not take stock, not take account of the words of their mouth. And we can demean him in word and action. But the Son of Man, this was a reference to while he walked and ministered on the earth. So his own brothers, James and Jude, who eventually wrote 2 epistles which bear their names included in the New Testament, the evidence as pointed in John 7:5 indicates that they struggled to believe him in his messianic claim and character in his own life, and it was not until the resurrection that they became devoted disciples. But they didn't exactly blaspheme him. They just doubted and perhaps even denied his claim. But that was perfectly forgivable, because the resurrection was the ultimate witness of who he was and what he did. And after that point, the apostles were empowered and witnessed through his designated successor, the Ruach Kadesh, through whom they were able to wield effective and exceptional evangelical harvests. But once one denies the Father and denies the Son and denies the Ruach Kadesh, there is no one left to deny that can save you. And when they bring you to the congregations and rulers and authorities, do not worry about how or what you shall answer, or what you should say. Now this injunction was issued to the disciples of his generation, who after his death would be brought before rulers, both civil and ecclesiastical, to witness, as an opportunity to witness, and they are instructed to take no thought, no preparation, no premeditation as to the words that will come out of their mouth. They have the assurance that the Ruach Kadesh will visit them in that moment in time and guide them to say whatever they need to say in order to survive and give a witness to the Gentile rulers and the Jewish authorities. For the Ruach Kadesh shall teach you in that very hour what you should say. So that's once more the assurance of his presence, his comforting, and his comfort and his enablement. He will supply the words, so there's no sense. Now that does not ought not be interpreted to suggest that we take no preparation in what we will say when we have the opportunity to present our witnesses in various contexts. This is just this specific context when they are dragged by the persecuting powers on account of their witness. They will have an opportunity to witness, and the Ruach Kadesh will speak effectively and powerfully through them, because he will be with them at that moment in time. And that should be our prayer, that he is with us when we witness. And someone from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, speak to my brother, to divide the inheritance with me." So this man had a somewhat selfish conception of who the Messiah was. He wanted to use him to gain a favorable ruling in the division of his inheritance with his brother. But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or divider over you?" So this is not a role he willfully accepted. He did not come to judge men in their pecuniary and petty affairs, but to judge them eternally and to provide them a way out to escape the wrath of the judgment. And he said to them, "Mind and beware of greed, because one's life does not consist in the excesses of his possessions." So this is a warning against the sin of covetousness, which often leads to stealing and adultery, and it's an attitude which stimulates the lust, which lead to perverted actions, and love of money is one of the most deadly and deceptive of the forms of covetousness. But he's telling them that you cannot measure life according to the measurable resources you have acquired and attained. So buying the things that money can buy is all well and good. There's nothing sinful in it, in as much as you do not do it to an idolatrous extent, but it's no substitute for it's no exchange or substitute for the things which money can't buy, which are eternal salvation, wisdom, and good character. He then spoke a parable to them, saying, "The land of a certain rich man yielded well." So a parable is a literary device whereby which one uses familiar or relatable objects to create fictional but highly plausible narrative sequence which illustrate a spiritually significant truth. And in this specific parable, the character is a certain rich man whose agricultural outcrop yielded abundantly. And he was reasoning with himself, saying, "What shall I do, because I have no room to store my crops?" So this certain rich man has a presumptuous attitude that all is well. He is satisfied. His main problem is not lack of resources, but in excess, in abundance of them. So he's asking him, what should I do to store all my crops? There's not enough room in the silos, in the facilities I currently now have to stock them properly. And he said, "I am going to do this: pull down my storehouses and build greater, and store all my crops and my goods there." So that's because he has the resources to do it. He has the inclination because he has the resources, and he values the treasures of this earth above his more eternal treasures, which he forfeited by coveting and forsaking the eternal treasures in pursuit of the earthly treasures. Then say to myself, "Life, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease. Eat, drink, rejoice." So this is an Epicurean mantra, which is eat, drink, and be merry, as it is in some translations. But this certain rich man was in for a rude awakening when the life that he counted on, he thought he had enough resources to last him a significant fraction of his remaining life, and he could be at ease and take luxury and do whatever he wanted to do. But that very night, what happens? And it reads, "But Elohim said to him, 'You mindless one, this night your life shall be demanded from you, and who shall own what you have prepared?'" So our life, it comes as a vapor, as James writes, and it can disappear, it can vanish in an instant. That's all it takes. You can only die once, and once you do, and except for medically extreme abnormal scenarios, one cannot be brought back to life once one has died. So all this possessions, all this abundance, all this excess was for naught, because as Job said, "Naked I came into the world, and naked I shall leave." You can't take anything with you that you acquire or accrue in the life that we now have with us to heaven. So is he who is storing up treasure for himself, and is not rich towards Elohim. Now, in some translations, it says a rich relationship with Elohim, and religion will not save you. It has to be a dynamic encounter in a living relationship with the Elohim who lives and loves that can save you. And no material items can potentially be a distraction and a stumbling block to laying hold and utilizing the saving relationship we are called to cultivate. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned till next time. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.